Once Emma, who took my fiancé Paul away and then disappeared without paying the compensation her parents had covered for her, now stands before us, making snide remarks. Quite older, isn't he? What does he do for a living? My husband's a doctor. Compared to him, your husband looks poor. He's got quite the muscles. Perhaps he works in construction. However, before I could retort, my husband Thomas stopped me.
I do physical work, yes. By the way, speaking of doctors, does that mean he works at the general hospital here?
Yes, he's a surgeon.
Oh, he's actually one of my subordinates.
What?
A surgeon at the general hospital. Martin, right? I believe his specialty is orthopedics.
What?
I might have forgotten to mention. I'm Thomas, the head of the surgery at the general hospital.
Shocked by encountering Emma, as soon as I got into the car to go home, I started crying, and Thomas asked me,
I've been thinking, Madison, how do you want to deal with her going forward?
Deal with her? That's impossible. It's definitely impossible. Just thinking about it makes me feel suffocated. There was a time when just thinking about Emma would cause me to have a panic attack.
Yeah, I understand you really don't want to be anywhere near that woman, so I have an idea.
An idea?
Yes, a way to ensure that woman doesn't appear before you anymore.
My name is Madison. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. Currently, I live a peaceful and enjoyable life with my husband, who is 12 years older than me, and our 3-year-old son. Thomas is always busy with work, but takes great pride in it. I find fulfillment in supporting him at home. It might be rare these days to wholeheartedly dedicate oneself to the household in support of a spouse who works outside. I might even get that comment from others. My parents have said as much. Now we're truly a happy family. But getting here wasn't without its share of painful experiences. That's because I was betrayed by someone I thought was my best friend. Emma, who I met in the same faculty at university, was my friend. No, my best friend for 4 years, doing everything together. Coming to a university in the city, Emma, who was bright, flashy, and above all active, reached out to me when I was feeling intimidated. To me, who had lived a modest and serious life through high school, she was someone who opened up a new world. And our relationship continued even after we graduated. Both of us got jobs in the city, and often went out for meals when we had time. Then I met someone, Paul, a young salesman from a manufacturer that did business with the trading company I worked for. As an office worker, I started getting asked out by him, and it eventually led to dating. Honestly, having barely dated men before, I was thrilled. Things went smoothly. We introduced each other to our parents, and at 26, we got engaged. I was probably too excited back then. You're not hanging out as much, are you? Emma would occasionally say something like that. Well, that's true. I don't have multiple bodies. Naturally, I spend more of my holidays with Paul. Do you have something to hide from me? Not hiding anything. Emma had never introduced someone she was dating to me before, so I thought friendships and romantic relationships were separate. We were planning our wedding. Naturally, more of my time was taken up by him. Not telling Emma was partly because I wanted to surprise her, and partly because I was embarrassed. Introducing him to Emma, who could easily talk to and hang out with various men, was intimidating. I was afraid of how Paul would appear through Emma's eyes, but as the wedding approached, I thought it would be okay. I have someone I want you to meet, I said to Emma, introducing her to Paul. Oh, Madison, you didn't have to hide him from me, your best friend, Emma said with a full smile, patting my back. But that was a mistake. When the wedding reservation and preparations were almost settled, he suddenly came to my parents' house and said,
I'm sorry, Madison. I can't marry you.
When I asked why,
It's because Emma is pregnant.
I couldn't understand what he meant at first. Then it was chaos. Was Emma really pregnant? At that point, it didn't matter anymore. He called off our engagement when the wedding was right around the corner.
I'm terribly sorry.
Stunned, Dad was deeply furious on my behalf, cursing and even hitting the deeply apologetic man. If Mom hadn't stopped him, things would have gotten out of hand. The wedding was canceled. While I was helpless,
My only daughter has been put through this.
my enraged parents demanded he pay all the cancellation fees and compensation to him. They also demanded compensation from Emma. He acknowledged his fault and paid what he owed, and seemed to apologize sincerely. I say seemed because my memory of that time isn't clear. At that time, I was apparently in denial due to the shock. So I found out later that Emma had ignored the apology and compensation payment and fled somewhere. Apparently, she wasn't actually pregnant, according to a letter left behind. And the lie in her fleeing hit me hard again.
What was she thinking?
Emma's parents were furious too. When the rumor spread among my friends from my student days, I heard another shocking thing. So Madison didn't notice, so I didn't say it on purpose, but Emma was approaching and dumping every guy Madison liked. It was news to me. Why would she do that? I don't know. Even though Emma was quite popular on her own, whenever someone made a move on you, she ended up dating them herself. Maybe she was jealous when guys approached you instead of her. But we were best friends. Really? Huh. I was surprised. Back then, it seemed like you were under Emma's thumb, and everyone thought Emma wanted it that way. Those words shocked me deeply. Not only that Emma thought that way, but that I had been completely unaware of it, and that I had no eye for men at all. In addition to the shock, I was eventually overwhelmed by the gaze of a woman who had her fiancé stolen right before her wedding at work. I ended up quitting my job and recuperating at my parents' home for a while. After settling down, I started looking for a marriage partner at 28, encouraged by my parents. Since I no longer trusted my own judgment, I felt more comfortable with introductions from relatives who were worried about me. Among them, I met Thomas, who was significantly older. He was too busy with work to think about women and realized he was this age before he knew it. His surroundings were worried because he was reaching 40, so they introduced him. I decided to marry him because of his honesty in saying,
I think I might neglect my family because of my job.
Due to the previous failure, we only informed close family members and higher-ups at work about the wedding. Then, the following year, I became pregnant and was planning to take a leave, but at that time, Thomas was headhunted to another city in the same industry, leading to our move. I felt guilty for leaving my not-so-long-term job, but everyone sent us off kindly. And so our new life as three began, but then... Could it be Madison? One day, Emma suddenly appeared before me. That day, we were shopping at a mall as a family. Our destination for the day was a home improvement store. Since moving here, we had been gradually working on the interior of our new home ourselves. Crafting was my hobby. Thomas's new job at a higher position, and the irregular hours were less than before. So sometimes he joined me for heavy shopping. Well, now he was carrying our son Stephen on his shoulders. But in that mall, what a coincidence. Emma. Long time no see. Wow, you got married. Yeah, but Emma, are you in this town? Yeah, moved here for my husband's job. Oh, so this is your current husband? Emma looked at us, then to Thomas. He's quite older, isn't he? She said snidely. Thomas simply responded,
Yes, well, I got caught up in my work. You're Madison's friend, right?
Yes, I'm Emma. But speaking of work, what do you do? Emma, isn't that too sudden? Oh, Madison, are you still mad about before? It's not about that. My husband is a doctor. Compared to your husband, he seems poor. He's got quite the muscles, though. Does he work on a construction site by any chance? Clearly, judging by appearance alone. That way of speaking. But before I could argue back, Thomas stopped me.
I do manual work as well. Speaking of doctors, does shopping here mean your husband works at the general hospital?
Yes, he's a surgeon.
He's my subordinate, though. You mean Martin, the surgeon at the general hospital? I've been remiss. I'm Thomas, the head of surgery at the general hospital.
Thomas, are you the one who was headhunted last year?
What a coincidence.
Thomas smiled. Yes. And suddenly, Emma's attitude changed. I remember there were indeed such instances in the past, but I just hadn't noticed. Well, I apologize for that. I just assumed because of your casual attire.
No worries. Casual wear is just that.
I gripped the hem of the work clothes Thomas was wearing at that moment.
What's up, Madison?
Let's go home.
Are you sure? It's been a while since you've seen your friend, right?
That's true. There's a lot I want to talk about. Let's go.
All right. Sorry about that. We'll catch up another time.
Yes, another time for sure. Emma's buoyant voice irked me immensely.
What's wrong? You look pale, and your pulse is quick.
As we headed back to the car and placed Stephen in his child seat, Thomas checked my temperature and pulse. I never want to see Emma again. Never. He then patted my trembling shoulder.
If you don't want to see her, that's fine. But could you tell me why later?
I nodded silently. That night, after putting Stephen to bed, I told Thomas everything that had happened.
I see. So that's what happened. I knew about your fiancé cheating before the wedding, but I didn't know it was her.
You knew?
I thought something sad had happened.
I silently nodded vigorously. Yes, it wasn't just that. It was so much more. Tears of frustration wouldn't stop. It was always like this. I realized something after it happens. I always hated Emma.
If that's the case, it's quite bad, and it seems like she has an unhealthy obsession with you.
With me?
Yeah, I mean, why else would she seduce and then discard every man who approaches you? What does she see in those men?
That's true, but...
Even your ex-fiancé, in the end, isn't married now, if she's with our Martin.
That's right.
And to think, Martin, and then?
Thomas appeared thoughtful. What's up about Emma's husband?
I've been thinking, Madison. How do you want to deal with her going forward?
Deal with her? That's impossible, obviously. Just the thought of it made me feel suffocated. There was a time when just thinking about Emma would make me hyperventilate.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand you really don't want to be near her, so I have a plan.
A plan?
Yes, a way to ensure she never appears before you again.
Then Thomas smiled again. That's right. This man, though he seems gentle, knows when to act. 2 weeks later, in the evening while preparing dinner and waiting for Thomas to come home, Mom, Grandpa, and Grandma. Stephen suddenly said that, pointing outside the window. Right after that, the doorbell rang. Indeed, it was my parents. I hurriedly welcomed them in. They had traveled across several states to get here. It's a several-hour drive. What's up? Why are you here?
Thomas called us, said it was urgent, and asked us to house sit.
House sit?
Didn't you know?
I hurriedly messaged Thomas. Immediately,
Dad and Mom have arrived, haven't they? Come here now, and bring a pair of earphones for the mobile phone.
That message and a URL for a store were sent. I don't know why, but it seems I have to go out now.
Unusual for Thomas?
I was in the middle of cooking dinner. That's fine. We'll finish it up. Let's make it our dinner. Wondering what was going on, I started getting ready to leave. By the way, Madison, I saw that girl's parents at the gas station on the way here." Suddenly, Mom reminded me as if she had just remembered. That girl? That girl. It's irritating even to remember. That girl. Could it be Emma? I don't even want to say her name. Yes, it's her, but what about her? I hadn't told my parents that Emma was living nearby. Considering how down I was back then, Mom's worry was immense, and her tirade against Emma's parents was severe. Honestly, I never thought Mom would speak so harshly. Given the past, I thought it would cause trouble if I mentioned Emma over the phone. I'll be going then. I drove out to the restaurant Thomas had directed me to. It was a quaint, atmospheric place. According to the restaurant's guide on the URL, the dinner prices seemed reasonable. Was Thomas waiting here for me? As I got out of the car, I noticed several cars parked as the evening gradually darkened. At the same time, another message came in on my mobile phone.
Put in the earphones and come inside.
Wondering what it was about, I entered. A waiter guided me, a two-table person. A man sat alone at a table next to an empty seat, his drink in front of him. The man, dressed all in black and wearing sunglasses, leaned forward on the table, elbows down, hands brought to his mouth looking solemn. He had an unapproachable aura. My companion isn't here yet. As I started to say this to the waiter, bringing water and presenting the menu, the waiter put a finger to his lips and pointed through the fronds of an Erica palm to a seat directly opposite. There was Thomas. The table was set with what seemed like an early dinner. Thomas was seated across from a woman. I nodded to the waiter and ordered a light meal that wouldn't seem out of place on the table. At that moment, my mobile phone vibrated in my bag. Startled, I saw it was from Thomas. I hurriedly attached the earphones to my phone and put them in my ears. Then,
"No, Martin is a good doctor, a plastic surgeon."
"But Dr. Thomas is much more impressive, isn't that so?" A woman's voice came through, her back to me. It was Emma. Shocked, I set the phone to record. Thomas was letting me listen on purpose. "I've told Martin a bit about you since then."
"Is that so?"
"I was surprised. After all, you've handled many difficult surgeries nationally, haven't you? Thousands over 10 years?"
"Well, it's my job."
"How impressive." Emma's tone had changed completely from the other day.
"It's surprising you researched that much."
"Actually, I heard it from Martin when I mentioned running into you by chance the other day." At that moment, the man in black uncrossed his hands, slightly lifted his lips, then sat back down. I noticed he also had earphones in.
"It must have been a surprise to suddenly meet an old friend like that."
"Yes, it was. But meeting you, Dr. Thomas, was the highlight."
"Shouldn't an old friend be more important?"
"No. I felt guilty for speaking to you in such a disparaging tone before, and I wanted to apologize." Emma continued in a tone as if she might bite her tongue. I didn't know this. She never spoke like this when she was with me during our student days. So this was her manner in front of men. And Paul had also been treated this way, which means, "Are you satisfied with your married life with Madison?"
"I'm satisfied, but why do you ask?"
"Isn't it boring to be with Madison?"
"Why would you say that?"
"Because she was abandoned by her fiancé in the past."
"Madison is a good wife. Too good for me."
"But she's plain, isn't she?"
"What are you trying to say? Aren't you Martin's wife?"
"Can't you call me Emma, Doctor? Actually, since we spoke the other day, I've fallen for your calm demeanor and statue. I think I can be much more for you than Madison could ever be." The man in black's hand on the table trembled visibly. So this man is really...
"Oh, for me? What do you mean by that?"
"Because don't you get invited to parties and such? With a plain wife like Madison, wouldn't you be embarrassed? At such events, you need someone with a bit of flair like me, for instance."
"So you wouldn't be embarrassed with me?"
Yes.
So you're suggesting you want to switch from Martin to me?
No, that sounds terrible when you put it that way.
What do you mean then? I'm not very good at reading between the lines, being the academic fool that I am.
Of course. Are you making a woman say this? I told you. I fell for you at first sight.
Martin is a promising man, not an old guy like me.
Age doesn't matter. To be honest, I've been disappointed in him. That's when it happened. The man in black attempted to stand up. I hurried over to him. The man in black? Yes, this must be Martin. Silently, I showed him my mobile phone, connected to my earphones. Martin composed himself and sat back down. I needed to hear something more definitive.
Disappointed because he comes home late? If it's about work, it can't be helped. Unfortunately, patients and illnesses don't wait.
No, it's not about him being late or anything like that.
Then what is it?
His salary.
For his age and career, it's normal. Young professionals are like that.
But he's a doctor, right?
So?
Well, if you're marrying a doctor, you expect an income over $100,000, wouldn't you?
I believe he makes around $70,000 now.
It was even less when we got married, and I was disappointed. Plus, he goes off to conferences and such without taking me along.
And you think I do differently?
It's not about the money. Haven't I said it several times? I fell for you at first sight.
So?
I want to be with you. At that moment, Martin finally stood up. I tried to stop him, but it was too late. He stood behind Emma across the Erica palm. I hurried after him. Then Thomas laughed again.
Emma, is what you just said true?
Unaware of us, Emma turned around at Martin's low voice. She literally jumped when she turned around. You and Madison, what are you two doing? Cheating?
See, guilty conscience speaks first,
Thomas said calmly to Emma.
I heard the conversation. You've always thought of me that way, haven't you?
What do you mean? Isn't it this? I presented the recording of our conversation to Emma. Huh? What's this? Thomas took out 2 mobile phones from his bag. One was connected to me, and the other must have been to Martin.
Do you even know what age a full-fledged doctor becomes?
What's this all of a sudden?
We spent 6 years in university, then 5 years of residency before becoming regular doctors. I had just become a regular doctor when I met you.
Huh? Emma started counting on her fingers.
In short, I was a fledgling newcomer.
But you said at parties you were a doctor.
I am a doctor, aren't I? And at that time, I was dragged out by high school friends. I thought it was too early for marriage, yet you came on to me aggressively. Even then, I was earning more than my peers in corporate jobs. You assumed I was a high earner on your own.
That's true. Doctors do earn well, but not until they are fully established. And whether they have their practice, where they work, their training model, and age can all affect income. And it's true that doctors have fewer chances for marriage.
It was a rare outing because I was still busy starting out. I initially refused because of that.
That's true, but...
It might sound like an excuse, but I initially wanted to work in rural medicine. I wanted to gain as much experience as possible to be competent in anything. But when I mentioned this, you threw a hysterical fit.
I didn't want to go to rural areas.
Even when I said it paid better, you didn't want to. And it's not just that. You said you'd be a housewife to support me, but you barely do any housework.
I was surprised at that. Housework isn't just a woman's job nowadays. That's if both are working, I chimed in. If you decide to be a housewife today, you really need to do the housework perfectly and not worry your husband at all. Madison, you're saying this too. Can you even manage that much? What about socializing and such?
It seems you've been saying things that don't quite make sense.
Thomas sighed deeply.
You seem to have a completely wrong image of what a doctor's wife should be.
Indeed, that's closer to the image of housewives from the past. There's nothing glamorous like what Emma imagines. I spend my time watching the clock for when this man might come home. There's childcare, and I also think about nutrition and meals to help him maintain the stamina for his 10-hour surgeries.
Aha! So I've often thought Martin was careless, but maybe you're not getting enough sleep at home, are you? Yes, well, I was already accustomed to cooking and housework on my own, but still my sleep time is significantly reduced, and when I'm awake, this guy keeps bothering me everywhere, so it's hard to find time to study.
Study?
That's right. It's only natural to keep updating my knowledge for the sake of the patients.
So, Madison, you're studying too now? Of course, it would be problematic if I couldn't respond to sudden calls from this man. If it were a marriage between doctors, tasks like housework and secretarial work would likely be outsourced. But I'm just an ordinary person, so I do what I can to support Thomas as much as possible. I believe my job is to support him for the sake of his hospital and his patients, and to show our son a good example of diligent work. Acting all high and mighty. Say what you will, I'm not the person I used to be anymore. Seeing Emma trying to directly seduce Tama triggered a different kind of anger in me than the fear I had before. Unable to retort, Emma stood there, overwhelmed by the shame of being contradicted. Then Martin spoke up decisively.
Emma, I've decided to leave you. We're getting a divorce.
What? What are you talking about?
Being with you, I can't become a good doctor. And let me ask again, are you willing to go with me to a remote area?
No way. I don't want to go to such a place.
I see, but I want to go, so I'm done being dragged around by you.
Emma's expression froze. You're leaving me? You? Suddenly, Emma turned to me. That's right, Madison. It's because I met you again. Why did you have to come here? If we hadn't met... If we hadn't met, you wouldn't have thought about taking my husband. You haven't changed at all since college. What? Acting all high and mighty? Watching her, I gradually realized that my perception of Emma shifted from fear to pity. Why have you always been taking my boyfriends, or those about to be, and then discarding them? Because I hated you, the good plain girl. So you hate me, but you've gone to a lot of trouble for that reason alone. After Paul, you even ran away from home. That's true. Emma's actions were indeed strange. I don't know what she disliked so much about me, but if she hated me, ignoring me or bullying me would have been simpler. Yet she took and discarded men, making it known to our friends. Even took my fiancé, resulting in compensation claims. Hey, Emma, could it be that you actually really liked me? What? She opened her eyes wide as if wondering what I was talking about. Is it just my imagination that even the thin veins at the base of her neck look like they're floating? It has long been said that when you get angry, the veins in your temples pop out. Because aside from Paul, I never noticed, and any man who switched to Emma because of her machinations was only showing his true worth. In the end, it worked out in my favor, didn't it? No, that's not true. Even if I had married Paul, he might have cheated on me. So, Emma, were you actually blocking my unhappiness? What? Emma's gaze wandered through the sky. Haven't you realized? That can't be. But sorry, I'll forget about you from now on. That's a lie. That can't be true. As she said this, Emma clutched her chest and suddenly collapsed in front of us.
Doctor?
Martin looked seriously at Thomas.
Call an ambulance, quickly. Yes.
Soon after explaining the situation to the ambulance, Thomas and Martin left with it. Indeed, Thomas's specialty is cardiac surgery. It looks like he won't be coming home today. As I sigh deeply, thank you for your hard work. The waiter brings our order. Thank you. Sorry for causing such a commotion. No, Thomas had reserved this place for just this time today anyway. Imagine that. He had gone to such lengths. I smiled, realizing once again that when he does something, he does it thoroughly. Later, there was another stir at the hospital. According to Thomas's plan, Emma's parents were supposed to make a sudden visit next. It turns out Emma had only informed them of her marriage, but had never introduced Martin to her parents. Perhaps the timing had made it difficult for them to travel far, but that time was past. Through Martin, Thomas had contacted Emma's parents, requesting their presence for 2 reasons. One was the concern that Emma might cause trouble again with men. The other was because Thomas had noticed something off about Emma's health from the first time they met, especially the bulging veins on the right side of her neck. Indeed, Emma was found to have a heart condition when taken by ambulance. Thanks to the timely intervention, her life was saved, but she needed to stay in the hospital for a while. And then her parents, who had rushed over, insisted on taking Emma back home with them. Emma was greatly shaken by the divorce, her sudden illness, and being called out by me, whom she had looked down upon. "I don't want to go back to my parents' home." Emma resisted her parents' decision, but
"You still need to repay the compensation money we fronted for you."
her father's anger left her physically weakened, unable to argue. The divorce proceedings became contentious, leading to mediation, where Martin's misuse of his savings was brought up, and the amount owed by Emma's parents ballooned even further. Dragged back home by her parents, Emma now had no choice but to work within their sight to repay them, unable to flee again. Without a proper job under her parents' watchful eye, while caring for her health, must be unbearably trying for the free-spirited Emma.
"Look, a message from Martin."
It's the weekend. Thomas has a half-day off, so for the first time in a while, we're at a large park with a wide expanse of grass. Despite the ongoing chilly days, Stephen, warmly dressed, is running around the grass laughing. Does he seem well? Sitting side by side on a bench where Stephen is in sight, we take turns looking at the message.
"Look at this photo."
In the photo, Martin is smiling, participating in a local event with the townspeople. A stark contrast to his previously distressed demeanor. That's good.
"You don't have to be troubled by the past anymore."
That's truly the case. Half of the fear was of my own making, and it seems to have vanished somewhere since dealing with Emma, like shedding a burden. "Papa!" Stephen waves at us enthusiastically.
"Here I come."
Thomas runs towards him, and I watch over them, both now and in the future.